All right, it is, we are streaming, this meeting is being recorded and being streamed live to YouTube. I see some people are still coming into the meeting, but Kurt, it is 1:30, just so you're aware.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'll call this February meeting of the TMC TAG to order. I believe the first thing is to call roll call. Jennifer?
Yes, sir. Janina Stanfley. Or Stephen Diaz. I think you might be covering her today. Are you on
I'm
yet?
covering for Janina today. She's taller than I am.
Perfect. And we have a new member today. I want to welcome Adalie LeGrand from Hart. I see you're on the line.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you for joining us. Jonathan Roberson from MCAT.
Here.
Kurt Scheibel.
Here.
And then from PSTA, do we have a representative today?
Heather Sobush is here.
Heather? Perfect. Thank you, Heather. Lon Fry. Or Lori Hall. Tom Phillips. And then I wasn't sure if Jane Grogg from Sarasota County Area Transit was going to be joining us or not. Do we have her on today?
I do not see her.
Okay. How about Sarah Blanchard? Okay. We do have a quorum as far as the TMC is concerned. And then do we have Chris Cochran here for TAG today? Okay. Paul Simmons?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Ming Gao? Kenneth Russ?
Yes, I'm here.
Anthony Gagliano? Michelle Zizulia? And last but not least, Whit Blanton.
Here.
Okay, we can go ahead and proceed.
Thank you. We're on to the public comment section. Persons wishing to address the committee can do it in either of two ways. Comments no more than 400 words may be sent to the public comment at TBARTA.com. Be read in the record. Written comments must be received no later than the day before the meeting. Comments must include the name, address, organization, and topic or agenda item. Jennifer, do we have any email public comments?
We do not.
Thank you. People wishing to speak during the meeting may call the phone number and the access code 30 minutes prior to the meeting. You'll first speak to a staff member to be able to provide public comment for maximum 3 minutes when recognized by the chairman, which is me. Terry, I believe you're the one who gets to, do we have anybody on hold?
We do not.
Okay. Is there anybody else who may be on the meeting that has a public comment? If not, then we'll move to consent agenda for December 2020 TMC TAG meeting minutes. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to move the minutes for December 2020. Jonathan.
A second.
Second, Heather Sobush.
Thank you. I believe we have to do a roll call vote. Is that correct, Jennifer?
Yes, and I just have 4 people to call. So Stephen Diaz.
Aye.
Okay. Adalie LeGrand.
Aye.
Jonathan Robertson.
Aye.
And Kurt Scheibel.
Aye. Motion
Okay.
passes.
Yep, motion passes.
Before we go into presentations, I just want to welcome Adalie. Welcome to the Tampa Bay area, and it's good to see you at Hart, and hopefully we'll see you many more times, and hopefully when all this craziness is done, we'll actually see you in person at one of the meetings. So welcome to the TMC and to Tampa Bay.
Thank you. You caught me getting a drink of water, but thank you. I'm very excited to be here and look forward to working with you guys closer or more closely.
Thank you kindly. And next we're going to have a presentation by Via about micro transit. Olivia was supposed to be here, but I believe Michael is going to fill in for her today. Michael, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Kurt. You guys are stuck with me today, but very nice to meet you all. My name is Mike Vaccarino. I lead the business development team for the East Coast at VIA. And I do have a presentation prepared for today, so I'll get my screen shared and make sure everyone can hear me all right. How does that look and sound to everyone?
Looks good.
Excellent. And just as a minor point here, my video might be a little bit slow, but I'm called in through my phone. So as I talk, you should be able to hear me pretty well. And please feel free to interrupt me or ask questions as we go through. If you have a question, put it in the chat channel or simply interrupt me. We have a small enough group today that I'm happy to have a discussion. I've set up today's meeting for about 20 minutes, leaving about 10 minutes for questions and answers. But again, like I said, please interrupt me if you have a question in the moment. I'm happy to stop. So with that, I'll head to the agenda and then we'll dive right in. But first of all, I thought it would be helpful to kind of take a step back and talk a little bit about what I'm hoping to do on today's call and kind of introduce the idea of VIA. Then we'll dive into the VIA solution and talk about a few examples of agencies that are using our technology to do really interesting things around the Southeast and around the world, frankly. And we'll, at the end of today, kind of pause and stop for a question and answer section. But there are a ton of other slides and materials in the appendix section of this deck, which I think Chris distributed prior to this call. So if you'd like to kind of dive in and learn more, you're more than welcome to. Also happy to set up any follow-up calls if you'd like. So with that, I thought I would kind of start by talking a little bit about my understanding of what you guys are hoping to learn today and ultimately hoping to achieve in the long run. All of this being said, you guys know your organization and your transit systems way better than me. So I'm always eager to learn more if I'm wrong, and please let me know. But I think at the end of the day, today's conversation is focused on, teaching you a bit more about the innovation that's happening in the transit space throughout the Southeast and throughout the world. But ultimately recognizing that your goal specifically as a part of this organization is to help establish and improve better connectivity across the 5-county region. And in doing so, really increase and create integrations between the transit agencies in an effort to reduce overlap and operate more efficiently as an overall system. Am I off base there, or it seems right to folks? I'll take that as a good. Everyone still hear me all right?
Yep, I think you're on base.
Yes, you're loud and clear.
Thanks.
Okay, cool. Thanks, guys. All right. So from here, we'll take a little bit of a few moments to kind of dive into the VIA solution, talk broadly about what we do, and then, like I said, we'll dive into some interesting services that I think would be most relevant to you guys. But at the core, what VIA helps transit agencies do is really digitize their systems in an effort to operate more efficiently and conveniently for riders. Most of you on this call probably know VIA as a company that helps transit agencies run on-demand public transit operations, sometimes referred to as microtransit operations. But what most people don't know about VIA is that we provide technology for a lot of different forms of public mobility, whether that's school buses or paratransit operations, fixed route operations, et cetera. At the end of the day, our software, our core expertise is anything that is shared and public mobility. And a few years ago, probably we would have been just talking about on-demand public transit in isolation of the rest of the transit network that exists. But today, through advancements and innovation, really the conversation has shifted away from small little on-demand pilots into this idea of integrated mobility, right? How do we use software and modern algorithms and new rider technologies to coordinate the movement of all different forms of transit in a given geography? And so what we focus on doing is helping you guys integrate your transit system a bit more seamlessly and provide new forms of transit, such as on-demand public transit. And just to give you a sense of, who we are and what we do, right? We're a company that today is operating in partnership with over 200 partners around the world. A majority of those partnerships are clearly in North America, but we do operate in quite diverse geographies around the globe, everywhere from Miami to New York, London, and Tokyo, but also very small geographies like, Newton, Massachusetts, outside of Boston, or Hampton Road Transit in Virginia. Our software is quite flexible and has been deployed in quite diverse environments around the world. And just to give you, one quick example of a partner that we work with and how they work with us, I thought it would be helpful to reference the Capital Metro and CARTS example. So Capital Metro serves the Austin region, mostly the downtown Austin region, and CARTS is a more rural agency. They coordinate quite closely on service. And both of them are using a unified VIA backend to operate services in and around the Austin area. And as you can see on this right-hand side, they're actually using our technology in 8 different zones around the Austin metropolitan area. And this red one that is highlighted is representative of the metrics that you see here. But the takeaway from this slide is that each one of these zones operates in a very different fashion. It's a very different use case, right? The red zone was a replacement of a deviated fixed route, which required a 24-hour pre-booking call-in to request a deviation, with a completely on-demand microtransit service that now operates here more effectively and more efficiently. But the services that are down by Austin, these are first and last mile feeder services into the existing fixed route network. And then as you go out into the suburbs and the much more rural areas around Austin, which are operated by CARTS, you start to see a very different set of riders, senior riders, folks who are just using the service to get around town, to get to medical appointments, grocery stores. So again, our technology can be used in a wide variety of different ways, and in a lot of different services. And we'll talk about a few other clients that are working with us, but I thought this was a helpful and illustrative example of a multi-agency service using our platform. When you look across that global map, you kind of start to see that we operate, so Capital Metro is an example of an agency that we work with, but we also work directly with cities. We work with private transit operators that are contracted on behalf of transit agencies. So for example, Keolis uses our software in 16 of their partnerships around the world, and many other private operators work with us as well. And we're starting to see some schools and employers using our services as well. But for the most part, about 80% of our partnerships live within the city and transit agency space. And regardless of where we're operating or who we're operating with, we generally fit within one of these 2 partnership structures. Now, these very much exist within the spectrum or on a spectrum, but it's helpful to explain the differences. On the left-hand side, you have kind of a software partnership. So in this model, we assume that you have vehicles, you have drivers, you have dispatchers and customer service agents, but you'd like to use our software to create an on-demand transit operation or a variety of different operations. In the transportation as a service model, this is a turnkey operation that we operate on your behalf. So with Miami-Dade, for example, they run their fixed route operation, but they're using on-demand transit as a first and last mile feeder service to their fixed route systems, both rail and transit. And they've contracted VIA to provide vehicles, drivers, operations, customer service, marketing, you name it, we provide it under their brand and under their control. So they tell us where the vehicles can operate, they tell us how much to charge, when they should be operating, et cetera. And then we operate under the Miami-Dade Transit brand on their behalf. Now, I'll pause for questions in just a second so that I'm not just talking at you the whole time, but regardless of the model that we're operating under, SaaS or TaaS, the technology is largely the same. So on the left-hand side, you have the rider interfaces. Now, most of the time, what that means is a rider app, right? So if you're requesting a ride on demand, you book that ride through the mobile application. But we very much recognize that these are public transit services. And so, not everyone has a smartphone, not everyone has a credit card, and you have to accommodate those folks. And so we do allow booking through the phone, as well as on the web in case people prefer or can't use an app. And then on the right-hand side, you have the driver app. So this is a mobile application, iOS or Android, that works on a tablet or a smartphone. It's installed in the vehicle, and it directs the driver turn by turn to his or her next pickup or next assignment. Importantly, that this driver app takes into account real-time, real-world road conditions using the Google Maps API. So if we're directing a driver to go pick up a passenger, but there's an accident or a road closure, et cetera, we will direct that driver around that accident in real time, using real-world road conditions. And then the unifying software that exists in the cloud and is accessed through a browser is the administrative console. And this is designed for your dispatchers, your customer service agents to monitor the system in real time. But really importantly, this system is designed to not be monitored very heavily, right? To give you an example, we run a service in New York City with 2,000 active drivers at any given time, and we have 1.5 customer service agents staffed on the administrative console to manage that operation. So the magic of VIA, the beauty of VIA is that you shouldn't have to interact with your system. All of the powerhouse of the algorithms will automatically optimize the system without your intervention. But should a tire pop, right, you can come in here and take action there. So like I said, I'll pause here just to see if there's any questions, and then I'll kind of dive into the next section of today's chat. Anything I can answer?
Michael, can you go back to the slide that showed the different zones in Austin?
Yeah, happy to. Let me head back.
For this type of service to work, I'm assuming you would have to have a steady flow of traffic throughout the entire day going to all of these zones, correct? For it to be cost effective? Okay.
Well, the important thing is within the zones, right? So this area that you're seeing over here, this is an exurb of Austin that has become popular in the last 5 or 6 years, had a very poor traditional fixed route network. They had a deviated fixed route, but no one wrote it. This is actually a picture of that exurb up here. And so there is a strong demand within this zone to travel to Walmart and doctor's appointments, et cetera. One comparative example, and then I'll pause for any other questions, but these zones down here are actually kind of more so feeder services into the fixed route network of the Austin core, right? So if you live here and you want to go over here, you'll probably take a microtransit vehicle to a fixed route and then complete your journey with a fixed route vehicle for the remainder.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, very welcome. Anything else that I can address? All right. And we'll show a few more maps today and talk about a few other innovative service designs, so you'll get a different flavor for different communities. Now, one thing to mention about our technology, and I kind of missed this point, but I think it's a relevant one, is that VIA is not alone in this space. There's a lot of other vendors that do on-demand transit, and we're glad to have them in the mix, right? The more that innovation can exist within the transit space, the better for all of us, we believe. But what really differentiates VIA most often is that we also operate a lot of our own services under this model, right? So Miami-Dade, as an example, about 60% of our business is software and 40% of our business is TaaS. The reason that's important for you guys and the reason that differentiates us is because since we operate our own services using our own technology, if there's a bug in the software or something has to get fixed, right, we actually have to do it immediately in order to operate our own services effectively and cost efficiently. Whereas many of our other competitors simply make software, they hand it over to you and say, go, and you're kind of on your own to make it work the best that you can as it exists. We're constantly making innovations and changes in order to operate our service more effectively, and those pass on to you. But really importantly, I think, we talked about the rider app, we talked about all of the different technology. Really importantly, our philosophy is that no matter what we do with you, if we do it with you, it should be done under your own brand, right? So when we put a rider interface out there, it's your colors, your logos, your messages, right? Your phone numbers, everything that we do helps you build your ridership under your brand. We take no pride in attracting people to the VIA brand. We want to help you guys operate your services and build your own engagement with your own riders. And kind of building on that point, I alluded to this early on in the presentation, but I think gone are the days where we could consider microtransit existing in isolation of the rest of the transit network. And so what that means is that, let's say that you guys have a transit planning partner like Transit App, right, for example. Again, we really don't take much pride in owning the rider interface. If you prefer your riders to book rides elsewhere or request on-demand trips elsewhere, we're happy to integrate into other apps. Moreover, we believe that microtransit should be a core component of the overall transit network, meaning that when you plan a trip, if that trip is better served by an existing fixed route, and when I say better served, I mean more cost effectively or more efficiently, or maybe it's just a better ride, lower wait time. If that trip is better served by a fixed route system, we want to direct that rider towards the fixed route system in a multimodal trip planning environment. And you can see a screenshot here. And so we use GTFS feeds to integrate into your existing fixed route network, and again, direct riders to the most effective mode of transit throughout the day. And the last point here, building upon this idea of integrated mobility, is that fare systems are also really important as a way to remove friction from the system. So of course, we can correct credit cards and PayPal and Apple Pay. We can do all of that. That's table stakes. But if we really want to make this a core component of your system, we need to be able to collect your fares as well. And so, for example, with Miami-Dade, we're integrated into their Cubic backend with the Easy Card system. And if you book an on-demand trip, you'll be able to pay for that trip using your Easy Card. Right now, that service is free, but in a few months, it will be a paid service, and we'll be using the Cubic backend to do that. And all of this, is sometimes rather new for a lot of the agencies that I speak with, right? A lot of people say, this is interesting, but I don't know how this is going to work in my system. I don't know if people are going to like it. Totally fair to bring that up. And what we do on our side is a lot of sophisticated simulations leading up to any launch. And there's kind of two models in which we engage under these simulations. So one model is kind of a free model where you come to us and you say, look, we're thinking about running an on-demand service in this area. Can you run a simulation for us? And we'll put together a 2-3 page report in a matter of a week, and we'll kind of help you understand what a service might look like in that area, a very rough estimate. We also have a dedicated transit planning team who can do month-long engagements and help you understand how an on-demand system might operate within the context of your existing transit network. And so with that, I'll kind of transition to the last section. I know I've taken up about 20 minutes or so so I'll try to keep this about 5-6 minutes, then I'll pause and happy to answer any other questions. But the first two examples I wanted to share are Miami and King County Metro. They're very, very similar services. And if you'd like introductions to any of these agencies that I talk about today, happy to make those. Also, feel free to reach out yourselves. But both of these services are very similar in that they're designed as first and last mile services to rail. In the Miami-Dade's case, it's Metro Rail, and King County Metro's case in Seattle, it is a light rail system on the south side of the town. And you can see that they're operating under the TAS model, meaning that we provide the vehicles, the drivers, the technology, et cetera, and we do so under their own branding and design, meaning that any of the ridership is reported through their FTA and NTD reports, and they, this is their ridership. The King County Metro one is really interesting. It's a really highly efficient service. We're moving about 14 passengers per vehicle hour in one of these services. During peak demand times, they fit up to 6 passengers pre-COVID. Now we're only allowing 3 passengers. And so we're making some pretty short trips, under 3 miles back and forth in the morning and PM commutes to get people connected into the rail network. And the Miami-Dade system operates very similarly. But I also wanted to share an example of a city that is actually using this type of first and last mile service in addition, beyond just the agencies that we just mentioned. So Jersey City is served by NJ Transit. It's a dense, urban, low-income environment. NJ Transit serves this central zone really well, and I'll talk a little bit more about those zones in a second, but fails to serve this outer zone, sufficiently, according to the mayor and his staff. And so they contracted with VIA to provide a fleet of about 20 on-demand vehicles that operate throughout the city limits. Any citizen can download the app, request a ride. It's a flat $2 fare anywhere within the city. So it's quite attractive relative to the Uber and Lyft systems that exist within this environment. And it's really done a very good job of increasing transit access in this outer zone. And the way that these two zones interact is that, like I said, the central zone is really well served by existing transit, NJ Transit, PATH, Metro North, et cetera, or MTA rather, excuse me. And they didn't want to cannibalize the existing fixed route networks. And so the way that the system works is that if you're in the central zone, you can actually only go between the outer and central zones. In other words, you can't travel intra-central zone, central zone to central zone. If you're in the outer zone, you can go anywhere, right? You can go to other places in the outer zone, or you can go to the central zone. And what that does is make sure that the transit deserts are filled in this outer zone, but we're not cannibalizing the existing system within this network. But the examples I've just talked about, and this is one of the last case studies, I'll be wrapping us up here in about 2 or 3 minutes. The examples that I've talked about so far have been, large urban environments. As you saw on that map, we're in 200 places around the world. Many of those deployments are rather rural. Really good example of that is our partnership with Baldwin County, Alabama. They have 30 vehicles, all of these cutaways that you see over here on the right-hand side. And they are serving a 2,000 square mile county with a population of about 200,000. So it's a very sparsely populated environment. And prior to working with VIA, there was only a few different places that you could travel throughout the county, and you had to call a few days in advance, and there were certain places you could and couldn't go, et cetera. So it was a bit of a confusing rider experience. Today, there's an app you can also call in to request a ride. And the zones are designed in a way to promote aggregation. So if you're in one of these green zones, which tend to be the more densely populated zones, you can request an on-demand ride. So I can go from Fairhope to Spanish Fort, with a wait time of about 10 minutes for a vehicle. Or I can go within one of these green zones over here as well. But if I want to go from a green zone to a blue zone, or from a green zone to another green zone, the app or the service asks you to pre-schedule your ride 3 hours in advance. So it's still better than a day in advance, but in order to get as much aggregation in these trips as possible, we have a 3-hour pre-scheduling window. And then these blue zones are the least densely populated areas. And so if you're going from blue zone to blue zone or within a blue zone, we ask you to pre-schedule about 12 hours in advance. So again, still better than a day in advance, but that 12-hour timeline allows us to get as many passengers into a vehicle as possible. And then lastly, and I promise I'll stop right after here and we can open it up for questions, an example of an agency that is unifying a bunch of different modes under one software platform, VIA's software platform. And this is Golden Empire Transit in California. And they're using a fleet of 40-foot buses and a fleet of cutaway paratransit vehicles. And what they're doing with that paratransit fleet is allowing riders to book via an app a day in advance. So ADA Paratransit, book a day in advance. You can call in, use the app however you please. But then they're opening up the excess capacity of their paratransit fleet for microtransit riders. So the day before, all of the rides go into the system. For the paratransit riders, they get preference. And if you're a microtransit rider, you open up the app the day of, you request a ride. If there's capacity in the paratransit vehicles, then they will allow that microtransit rider to get an on-demand ride, meaning that they're improving the overall utilization of their paratransit fleet, reducing the cost per passenger quite significantly. And then in addition, they also have their fixed route vehicles, their GTFS feed in the app itself. So if there's not a microtransit trip available, they'll automatically be directed to the fixed route network. And you'll take your trip that way. So, like I said, that was the end of today's presentation, but happy to answer any questions.
Well, I do have to say I'm familiar with GET because I was born and raised in where that is, in Bakersfield, California. So
great.
that's pretty interesting. I like the stories. The one question is what was the ridership increase or the low decrease that they experienced when they implemented your system at GET?
So GET went live in mid-December. So we're still kind of like, getting it all up and running. And there is remarkable data that I know off the top of my head. But feel free to reach out. They have fielded quite a few calls recently because people are quite interested in their service.
Okay. The other question I have is you have Olivia's email address down there. Do you want us to contact
Yeah.
Olivia or you?
You are free to contact both. Olivia was supposed to take today's call. As she was unfortunately unable to make it. So please reach out to Olivia or myself, and either will be fine.
So if you could type on your slide or type us what your, or send it to, if you can, send your email address to Chris, and then he'll get it all out to the team if you don't mind doing that, Chris, for us. And then anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, Michael, that last example you gave where they were combining microtransit with ADA paratransit trips. Generally, ADA paratransit, it's limited to within 3/4 mile of a fixed route. If a microtransit person books a trip on that, are they also restricted to within that 3/4 mile buffer, or will the vehicle take them anywhere they want to go within the zone?
The vehicle will take them anywhere they want to go within the predefined microtransit zone. The microtransit zone is not their entire service area because that would be quite costly to serve. So it generally overlaps well with the paratransit service, but it is smaller than the paratransit service will go.
Okay. And then with the example from Alabama where, if you go from a green zone to a blue zone, you book 3 hours in advance. If you're going from I think you said a blue to a blue, it's 12 hours. Is there any sort of minimum threshold on how many passengers have to book a trip? Or let's say, for example, if I want to go from one blue zone to another one, I put in my trip request 12 hours in advance, but no one else wants to make that same trip. Would my trip be canceled because there's not enough people, or would it still be provided?
So the way that they've designed it, they will take all trips. So they didn't have a problem serving a trip, even a really long one, with only one passenger. We could configure it in the system so that there was a minimum threshold, but they've decided as an agency, we're going to serve it all.
Okay. I don't know if any of our committee members that are on the call today would be willing to say whether or not their agency has considered replacing any of their fixed route service with microtransit.
I'll step up right now. I'm actively looking to do so. We are putting out hopefully an RFP soon to look at our whole service as part of the COA, but part of that is looking at microtransit options and how to implement.
Wonderful. We'll be happy to take a look.
Brian, Jonathan here. I'd just add that we currently open up our paratransit system for micromobility trips out on Longboat Key. Similar to what was explained, there's capacity and so on for that, and it is more door to door. It's not just the 3/4 mile. So the rest of our service area is pretty well covered by fixed routes, but this was an area that wasn't. So this type of service worked for us well. We have our own ticketing and bus tracking and trip planning software as well for regular fixed route. So hope that helps.
So does anybody else have any questions for Michael? Or do we lose him? Yeah, I'm mute, Michael.
Sorry about that. My video is a little spotty, but I've been hearing the whole conversation. So,
Okay.
if nothing else, thank you all for having us. We're humbled and honored to be able to present, and Should you have any questions, I'll follow up with my email address, and thank you all.
Last chance for questions for Michael. Thanks, Michael, for coming in and briefing us on microtransit. I know it's there's been a lot of changes over the year with software, so I think a lot of people will be interested in that down the road. So moving on.
Absolutely.
So moving on to the next item is new business and committee discussion. I believe Chris Dianantis has some stuff about presentation about TD Tampa Bay.
Right.
Chris?
Yeah. Good afternoon. Thank you, Chris Dianantis with TBARTA. I wanted to give just a brief description of the service for those that may not be familiar with it. TBARTA partnered with USERV at TNC to provide cross-county trips for the transportation disadvantaged. That's the primary focus. But this service also provides trips when the CTCs are not in operation, so after hours and on weekends. And I'm just going to give you some stats over the past couple months. The service started on December 1st, and demand has increased. For the month of December, USERV provided 70 trips, that's 70. And in January, 260 trips for a total of 330 trips. Most of the trip purpose, most of those trips were medical and for employment, but some were also social. So about 100 medical and also 100 for employment. Of the 330, 214 were cross county, 112 were in the evening, and 83 were during the weekend. Most of the 330 trips came out of or were within Hillsborough County, about 151, so a little less than half. And then the next highest number was Pinellas at 91, 25 in Hernando, 16 in Manatee, and 47 in Pasco. On-time performance for December was 100, and for January was 99.2. And that's what I have for, well, we had 16 unique riders for December, and that increased, doubled for January. So there's 32 unique users of the service so far. And we've saw some numbers for February, and it continues to increase. So that's kind of a brief update, and I'll take any questions.
Anybody have any questions for Chris? Thank you, Chris. We'll now move on to the regional ADA service update. Brian, you're up.
Yeah, so at the December 8th TMC tag meeting, we had a discussion about TBARTA becoming the regional ADA provider for the 5-county region. And the committee was supportive of TBARTA at least exploring the idea. So far, Chris D and I have met with Bonnie Epstein and Ross Silvers from PSTA and with Kurt Scheibel from PCPT. Next Thursday, we're going to be meeting with Janina Stampley from Hernando County. Just kind of give you a little summary of what we've learned so far. For PSTA, what we heard was that branding is very important to Brad. The new contract for their ADA service provider will require that the provider place a magnet with the PSTA logo on the side of the vehicle. Brad wants residents of Pinellas County to know that PSTA is paying for that service. So if TBARTA were to be the ADA service provider for the 5-county region, it would be important to PSTA that they still get recognition for funding the service. They mentioned that PSTA is going to be bringing the call center function for ADA back in-house. Ross seemed to think that there could be cost efficiencies of having one call center for the 5-county region. They said right now, PSTA pays about $20 per trip for ambulatory and $34 per trip for wheelchair, and those costs will likely go up under the new contract. With PCPT, what we heard from Kurt was that PCPT would not be able to contract out just the ADA piece to TBARTA. TBARTA would also have to be willing to take on PCPT's transportation disadvantage services, as well as their service to older residents that they fund through the Older Americans Act. Kurt did have an interesting recommendation that TBARTA seek to become the CTC for the 5-county region. On the one hand, CTCs coordinate TD service, not ADA service, but I think what Kurt's point was that by becoming the CTC for the 5-county region, that would help set up TBARTA down the road for being the regional ADA service provider. Hopefully I captured my notes from our meeting with you, Kurt, correctly. So, but that's what we learned so far.
Okay, any questions for Brian? Next agenda item is items report to the TBARTA board. I'll just kind of go around the screen here and ask people if they have anything they would like to bring to the group and move forward. Stephen, I believe you're first up. If you have anything for the board.
I have a script from Janina, if I can pass it on, I suppose. Regarding COVID updates, they are providing regular transit service, collecting fares. Masks are required, and they'll provide one if someone doesn't have one. They have a real-time information app, which is a web portal, and a bus status is sent via text. Apparently, they've received 2 new buses, which brings their average fleet age down to 5 years now. And they have some kind of notification module which provides day before and same day trip reminders to ADA riders. And they are working with a firm to prepare a design for the last 25 bus stops, and apparently 55% of them are now ADA compliant. And I think that was it for now, Kurt.
Thanks, Stephen. Terry, do you have anything you'd like to bring?
No, I do not have anything to bring to the board. Thank you, Kurt.
Thank you, ma'am. Wet, do you have anything you'd like to bring forward?
Yes, just to mention that the TMA leadership group meeting is March 12th. It's hosted by Pasco MPO. And one of the items that we are planning to discuss is just revisiting the regional express bus concept. You may remember that TBARTA has adopted Envision 2030 plan, outlined a number of potential routes. And I think the next step would be for the MPOs to talk about some potential options where there might be some local funding interest in participating in that. So we would be looking at the US 19 corridor, for instance, which we've talked about as a group, maybe the 580 corridor from the Countryside Mall into the airport area in Tampa. And certainly PSTA has been long exploring the I-275 route into the Tampa International Airport and on into downtown. So it'll probably be a pretty broad conversation, but just to explore interest.
Thank you, Wade. Adelie, hopefully I'm pronouncing your name right. Adelie, do you have anything you'd like to bring forward to the group?
First, Kurt, you are pronouncing my name correctly, so thank you for that. And I have nothing new to present today.
And once again, I welcome you to the group and to Tampa Bay area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jonathan, do you have anything you'd like to bring to the group?
Oh, just a thanks. I don't think I got to do this at the last meeting, but the TBARTA board did a resolution in August supporting our grant application to enhance service frequencies on our Route 99 US 41 route, and we found out, I believe, December time that was funded, and so we're going to be able to. We have the new buses in the TIP. They've been in the TIP for a few years with our MPO down here, but we just wanted to give a shout again to staff and the board for the resolution last August. I think it paid off and allowed us to get this corridor grant for 20-minute service. This was a route identified in the regional TDP of TBARTA. So just a shout out to everybody and a thanks. TBARTA, the state, the MPO, this is a great example of all the plans kind of matching up and everybody moving in the right direction and a regional corridor getting enhanced. So our next step is to maybe get some ITS and transit ITS projects out on the corridor, working with the MPO down here and DOT as well. So just a shout out to everybody. Thanks again.
And congratulations on moving forward with that whole project there. I know it's a huge undertaking, so good luck in the future on that. Paul Simmons, do you have anything you would like to bring forth?
Couldn't find the mute button there. Sorry. No, I don't have anything further today, Kurt. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Kenneth, do you have anything you would like to bring forward?
No, but thanks.
Thank you, Kenneth. Heather, how about you? You got anything from your way?
I do not, thank you.
Roger, let's see who's left. David, do you have anything you'd like to bring forward to the group?
Yes, thanks, Kurt. Yeah, just wanted to welcome Adelie to Tampa Bay and to the group. She and I had an opportunity to speak for a little while last week, and she's got great experience and some really good ideas, and I think is just a perfect addition to Hart and Hillsborough County. And we certainly look forward to working with her and her team and partnering on any potential projects that might make sense for us to collaborate on. One thing that we are working on right now with PSCA is an extension of their AV pilot project. You all may know that they are currently running the AVA AV shuttles in downtown St. Pete with an interest in continuing that in Clearwater Beach and in Dunedin. And so we've been coordinating with them, and we've got something that we're preparing to take to our finance committee and board meetings next week to seek for approval in order to help them actually implement those pilots in the additional 2 communities. One other thing that we are going to be seeking approval for, and I don't know if we've talked about it at the TMC meeting before, but it's a proclamation to recognize the staff and employees of each of your agencies for the commitment and dedication that they have shown in continuing to provide essential transit services during the difficult times of COVID during the past year. This was an idea that came forward from our CAC, the Citizens Advisory Committee. They felt very strongly that TBARTA's board should do something very symbolic to recognize the dedication that all of the transit folks throughout Tampa Bay have shown in helping essential workers get to their places of employment. So we're hoping to get that approved by the board next week as well, after which time we would want to coordinate with each of you so we can present it to you at one of your board meetings to recognize your employees. And that's all I have.
Thanks, David. And as soon as you get all that together, let us know and we'll get something. I'm sure everybody here will be one to recognize the efforts our drivers are doing every single day out there, not knowing if the person they're picking up has whatever, and doing with a smile on their face and safely transporting them where they need to go. So we'll get with you on that. Well, the only thing I really have for PCPT is we're about to roll out our new paratransit software. We went with EcoLane. We're probably doing a soft, soft opening next week with a full up, here we go, on the 23rd of February. We're really excited about this because it's going to open up some opportunities that I have been needed here for a long time. And I really think that we're going to be able to move forward and provide some really good efficiencies, but also the customer service aspects of the system are just phenomenal. So other than that, I'm going to say one last time, does anybody have anything they want to reattack or bring back around before I close out the meeting? And I will entertain a motion then to adjourn.
Move to adjourn, Heather Sobush.
Heather says we're moved to adjourn. And so on that, we'll see you in 2 months, I believe. The next one's May 11th. No, I'm sorry. It says May 11th. I'm sorry. May 11th of 2021 at PSDA boardroom. Hope to be able to sit down and see you all then. Everyone have a great day.
Thanks, everybody. Good job.